I'm sure you guys have heard about the deep state, and how corrupt they are, but and how corrupt they are. Well, here's a short video that goes into some of it. And I don't know if it goes real deep or not, but it tells you what's going on with corporate communism and the deep state. And it's pretty interesting. We'll let you take a look at it here, listen to it, watch it, whatever. All right, here we go.
United States, from men who supposedly were capitalists and who, according to conventional wisdom, should have been the mortal enemies of socialism and communism. In Truck, My Life, he tells British financier, who in 1907 gave him a quote, large loan unquote, to be repaid after the overthrow of the Tsar. That financier was identified as Lord Alfred Milner by White Russian General, Arsène de Goulavitch. In private interviews, Goulavitch said, I have been told that over 21 million rubles were spent by Lord Milner in financing the Russian Revolution. Another name specifically mentioned by de Goulavitch was that of Sir George Buchanan, the British ambassador to Russia at the time. Milner would later become the UK's Secretary of Defence and a signatory to the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I. In Winston Churchill's book, The Follies of the Victors, he quoted Milner as saying of the treaty, if humanity is to be saved from the nightmare of another Armageddon, it will only be by the creation of a new world order. These million-odd words of the peace treaty, with all its seals and signatures, will mean nothing if there is not a change in heart, not only in Germany, but in all nations. The League of Nations by which we set so much store will be reduced to impotence if it is not backed by the moral forces of an enlightened public opinion. Indeed, the League of Nations was founded by Woodrow Wilson after World War I, but it failed to prevent World War II and was folded into what became the United Nations. Sutton wrote that in Russia prior to and during the revolution, there were many local observers, tourists and newsmen, who reported that British and American agents were everywhere, particularly in St. Petersburg, providing money for the communist insurrection. For example, one report said that British agents were seen handing out 25-ruble notes to the men of a regiment just a few hours before it mutinied against its officers and sided with the communists. It was a repeat of the ploy that had worked so well for the cabal many times in the past. Once again, the deep state was working both sides of the conflict to weaken and topple a target government. Tsar Nicholas believed that since the British were Russia's allies in the war against Germany, that the British officials would be the last to conspire against him. Yet it was the British ambassador, himself, who represented the hidden group, which was financing the regime's downfall. In America at the time, the deep state didn't have the advantage of using the diplomatic service as cover, so they used a tactic that has become familiar to us today. They used a highly respected non-governmental organization and came disguised as Red Cross officials on a humanitarian mission. The group consisted almost entirely of financiers, lawyers and accountants from New York banks and investment firms. The demands of World War I had crushed the American Red Cross, and it was taken over by these New York bankers, who purchased the organization with large contributions to operate in its name. As Professor Sutton tells us, the Red Cross raised $2 million in 1910 from wealthy residents of New York City, like J.P. Morgan, who personally contributed $100,000. For the duration of the war, the Red Cross was nominally made a part of the U.S. Army and wore the uniform of Army officers. The entire expense of the Red Cross mission in Russia, including the purchase of uniforms, was paid for by the man who was appointed by President Wilson to become its head, Colonel William Boyce Thompson. Thompson was the classic specimen of the deep state at the time, coming from the world of high finance. When he attended the opera in St. Petersburg, he was given the imperial box. People on the street called him the American Tsar. Socialist revolutionary leader Alexander Kerensky viewed him as the real ambassador of the United States. Thompson coordinated the Wall Street purchases of Russian bonds, totaling 10 million rubles. In addition, he gave over 2 million rubles to Kerensky for propaganda purposes inside Russia. Together with J.P. Morgan, Thompson gave the ruble equivalent of $1 million to the Bolsheviks for the spreading of revolutionary propaganda outside of Russia, particularly in Germany and Austria. The agitation made possible by this funding led to the German communist uprising, known as the Spartacus Revolt of 1918. The Morgan Group provided funding for both Kerensky and Lenin. And although both were socialist revolutionaries, they were in fact bitter competitors for control of the new Russian government. By then, the tactic of funding both sides of a political contest had been raised to a fine art by the deep state. So, when we look at what's happening in America today, we can see that many of the destabilization tactics being used against us are at least a century old, and they were deployed by the financial elite to create the Soviet Union. When you go to the anarcho-communist website, Antifa.com, you are automatically redirected to JoeBiden.com. Although Biden may not tacitly approve of Antifa, he hasn't really condemned them, either. However, Antifa clearly approves of Biden. Biden's Soros-backed running mate, Kamala Harris, approves of the protests. She says the riots aren't going to stop before the election and they won't stop afterwards. Moreover, she says that they shouldn't stop. She says that we shouldn't stop. As president, Kamala Harris would double down on the current communist insurrection. That's why she was picked by George Soros. House Bill 7120, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act of 2020, was introduced by Kamala Harris, Cory Booker and Karen Bass, and it passed in Congress on June 25, but it has yet to pass in the Senate and to be approved by the president. Trump would never approve of it, but Biden or Harris certainly would. House Bill 7120 does to local law enforcement what the Trans-Pacific Partnership aimed to do to the U.S. economy, which was to circumvent U.S. sovereignty and hand our power over to a transnational consortium. Dismantling the police is the tried and true plan that NATO has used in countries all over the world to take over a country's police departments, city by city. It is a tactic that was outlined in Doug Valentine's book, called the Phoenix Program. When you make a donation to the Marxist group, Black Lives Matter, the payment is processed by Act Blue. Act Blue is the activist arm of the Democrat Party, a party that has become communist, almost overnight. Act Blue distributes these donation funds as they see fit, with most of it going to Joe Biden's campaign. If Joe Biden wins the presidency, the deep state, comprised of the banking, corporate and media elites, will have succeeded in ushering in a nascent communist regime in the United States.
The deep state and shadow government will stop at nothing. We are at a crossroads for humanity. It's either us or them. This one is for all the marbles, and this story is not yet over. We have an awesome responsibility to expose the lies and crimes and to reveal the truth. Freedom? It's up to us. This is John Michael Chambers. Thank you for viewing this special report. Be sure to share it far and wide. And remember, stay the course, trust the plan, heed the call, for where we go one, we go all. God bless.
And it just goes to show you how evil and vindictive the left is. And it's not only the left. There's some over on the conservative side too. But there's a lot more on the left. The left is crazy batshit. I'm talking, they're out there. It's the left is really wild. I mean, they want to sell America to the Marxist people. They want to be ran by an outside law enforcement. They don't want law enforcement in America. They want it run by the peacekeepers, the UN peacekeepers. They want those guys over here. That ain't going to work, guys. This is America. We have law enforcement. We don't need the UN over here messing around in our country. The UN needs to go. I wish President Trump would have thrown that whole thing out of America, sent it somewhere else. because the UN's not going to be happy until they got control over America. And that's a fact. And when they do, and when you know they take over America, that's when you know it's over. That's when you know the end times is right on us. I don't know, guys. I hope that something gets done about this stuff. I hope that we, as Americans, are smarter and keep an eye out on this. It's going to get bad if we don't. But we got to share this, get people aware of what's going on in the deep state and in these communist corporate businesses. You know, they want this UN stuff too, and you got to watch them. These people will get what they want if they lobby hard enough. We need to keep Trump for at least another 4 years. And then after that, I hope somebody else pops up that's as good as Trump. Not, we're screwed. We're screwed if Biden gets in, people, and you know it. Ain't no getting out of that one. Biden's a crook, a murderer. He's just an awful person. Him and his son are damn, I don't know, they're the crookedest damn bunch I ever seen in my life. But anyway, guys, hit that like button, hit that share button. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back tomorrow with more. Have a good night, and God bless.